very sad day. Pope Francis died last night of a stroke. Within a day of meeting with Vice President J.D. Vance and his family, we saw pictures of that, so it came as quite the startling surprise this morning to wake up to the news that the Pope had died. It immediately sets in motion a lot of different stories. I'll cover that later with Arthur Brooks, who's going to be along a little bit later. We may be able to find Ryan Anderson as well. There are a few Catholics in the United States, George Weigel among them, who actually know what's going on inside the Vatican. I'm not one of them, and I don't believe in the list of papabili that are just sort of thrown around and made up as you go along. You'll hear about Cardinal Erdo, for example, from Hungary. He's 72 years old, and the conservatives like him, and liberals like the Secretary of State, whose name is Parolin. I don't know. I don't know where they are. I have one observation. It has been since 1995 that the Catholic Church has had a pope under the age of 75. So that's the year in which John Paul II, St. John Paul II, turned 75, which was in 1995. And for the next 30 years, the pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church has been at least 75 years old, and usually much older. And I think that's got a weigh on the cardinal. It's a little dusty. Can I put it that way? A little dusty. I'm not being ageist. I'm just saying not only is there the baby boom that is younger than the last three popes, but so is all the baby boom, but the millennials, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, everybody. Now, that doesn't mean anything doctrinally. It's more aesthetically. I just think the optics of a papacy that is septuagenarian and octogenarian and nonagenarian is not good. And there are only two metrics that matter to me. How many people are going to Mass out of the 1.4 billion Catholics, of whom I am one? So I went to Mass yesterday, Easter Sunday. And how many priests are there? There are at present in the world 408,000 priests. That has been relatively stable since about 1970. So there was a drop-off right before Vatican II in the late 50s. Vatican II ran from, I think, 1962 to 1965. Can't remember really. But then there was another drop-off as more than 100,000 priests said, nah, not going to do this. And they left. And we've been at about 400,000. And the age has been getting older and older and older. So I believe in the United States, I believe the average age of a priest is 70. I believe. I don't know. I'm open to being wrong about that, but I believe that is it. Doesn't mean that there aren't some young priests. There are some great young priests. My diocese in Virginia is the Diocese of Arlington. They turn out, Bishop Burbidge is a great bishop. He turns out a lot of great young priests every year. On the West Coast, you're more than likely to run in priests who are not from America, though they have trained in America at St. John's Seminary or another seminary out here. My priest out here is Vietnamese. And that's not at all uncommon in Orange County and in Los Angeles County and San Diego County, as are Latino priests, Chinese priests. Very, very eclectic mix. But they just don't have enough of them. So much so that I had Susan Collins on the show last week talking about reforms to the R1 visa program, which allows religious workers, that would allow religious workers to stay longer than 5 years. So there won't be any news, real news, as opposed to gossip, for at least 15 days. There's a period of mourning of 9 days for the Pope. Then there's a period of a week before the conclave can actually close the doors on the Sistine Chapel. And sometimes that doesn't get started for 20 days. So it's 3 to 4 weeks before the world's 1.4 billion Catholics know who their new pontiff is. So don't come out hot Don't roll out hot with it's going to be this guy or that guy. Nobody knows. And I'm just kind of hoping for a repeat of 1978 when door number two, the first door number one was John Paul I, and he died very soon after he became Pope. And behind door number two was John Paul II, Karl Wojtyła. And that was amazing because it carried with it, I was a young man then, I'm not now, but an electric jolt in 1978. I think he was 58. And all of us, we'd gotten used to Pope Pius, I think Pope Paul VI forever. It's all I could remember. I didn't remember John the 23rd. I was a kid, child, didn't have any memory of him. Barely remember Paul VI because he was a reclusive figure who didn't get out much, made a couple of trips, but it was an Italian church at that point, and the bishops really did their own thing around the world. But John Paul worked in tandem with Reagan and Thatcher to bring down the Soviet Union and to take care of his homeland, Poland, and he meant something to non-Catholics. I would like for a pope like that again. I'm going to play in hours 2 or 3 a bit of an interview I did with Vim Venders, film director extraordinaire, from 2018 when he had a movie come out about Francis, for those of you who want to reminisce a little bit about that. But let's first turn to the news of the day, which is President Trump at the White House Easter egg roll, cut number 7.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, and a very happy Easter to everyone. It was a beautiful day yesterday, and it's a beautiful day today. We don't have to worry about sunburn, but looks like it's not going to be raining. It's going to be really something special. 40,000, 42,000 people are expected all throughout the day, and it's an honor to have you. I just signed an executive order putting the flags of our country, all of them, all federal flags and state flags, at half-mast in honor of Pope Francis. So he was a good man, worked hard. He loved the world, and it's an honor to do that. I want to thank everybody for being here. This is some band. I've heard this band actually indirectly for 4 years and very directly now for 4.5. And I like the direct method even better. But the Marine Corps band is very, very special. Thank you very much. What a great job. Thank you. Thank you. I also want to thank the National Park Service, the job they do in making everything so beautiful and spiffy. And I'm very difficult when it comes to that. I will tell you, very, very difficult. And I say they have done an incredible job. You just have to look around and see.
Cut number 8, he kept talking.
Speaking of special, Easter is special, and it's one of our favorite days. It's one of our favorite periods of time. We're honoring Jesus Christ, and we're going to honor Jesus Christ very powerfully throughout our lives, all throughout our lives, not just now, all throughout our lives. We're bringing religion back in America. We're bringing a lot of things back, but religion is coming back to America. That's why you see the kind of numbers that you're seeing, the spirit and the kind of numbers that you're seeing. So
now, what I like is that the Easter Bunny's on the balcony next to him. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you can watch him now point the audience and the bunny to the news media, cut number 9. He points to kids and says, see what that is? That's the fake news. Then he goes and works the press line a little bit, cut number 10.
You talked about Jesus in your opening statement. Yeah. How important is this country right now?
Very important. It brings the country together. I mean, it's so important that we can do that. Religion, I said, bring religion back. Religion keeps you together. It's such a great thing.
Number 11, asked about Pete Hegseth.
I mean, I hear they're doing that whole thing again. Here we go again. Just a waste of time. He is doing a great job.
Why do you still have confidence?
Because he's doing a great job. Thank you. Ask the Houthis how he's doing. Ask the Houthis.
It's pretty funny. Cut number 12, one last cut.
Do you remember the bunny with Joe Biden? Remember? Do you remember when the bunny took Joe Biden out? He's not taking Trump out. Anyway, That was a beautiful moment when the bunny.
He's very, by the way, very funny recollection. The bunny did take out Joe. That was the beginning of the end. A bunny took out Jimmy Carter, too, if you remember, the killer rabbit. And a bunny at Easter Day, at the Easter egg roll, took out Joe Biden, I guess 3 years ago. Beavers is with the Wall Street Journal. Olivia, I thought you would be at the White House today with the Easter egg roll. Is that not one of your favorite things?
Unfortunately, I had to hand that baton to my White House focused colleagues, but it's a really fun thing to cover with kids running around, laughing, crying, chasing the eggs, doing all these sort of yard lawn things. So it's a very, very fun thing that I did not get the chance to do this year.
Well, I've never been to the Easter egg roll at the White House, but it always makes great visuals. The president on the balcony with the first lady and the bunny today was pretty funny. And then reminding people that the bunny took out Joe Biden a few years. It was pretty funny. Olivia, is there any news at all in Washington? I mean, the Hegseth scandal isn't a scandal, and the president stood by him today. I don't know if that makes it go away or not. Do you think it makes it go away?
No, and I think next week you're going to hear reporters are going to be asking a bunch of senators about whether they think Hegseth should stay, whether it was a mistake to confirm him. Don Bacon is sort of raising some concerns, even though, he's not part of the confirmation process. He's saying, if he were in power, he would not let that be acceptable. So you are getting like some mild public criticism from one moderate centrist Republican in that vein. But I think next week is when you see if the story continues or not, depending on whether Republicans stick next to him.
But the president today said he's fine, he's doing a great job, asked the Houthis how he's doing. To me, if you're getting close to a confrontation with Iran, the last thing you need to do is shake up DOD. Have you heard that argument made?
I think I've heard that argument made for various national security figures in the past. When you're in a time of crisis, that's definitely a point that's made. NPR had a report that says that Hegseth's gone, but that's not really matching, I think, with what the White House is saying, what some of my colleagues are saying. But there's definitely like questions about his fate, maybe not now, but potentially in the future.
I am not familiar with the NPR report. What did they actually say? Did they say he's actually leaving?
They quoted a U.S. official as saying that they have already started the process of searching for Hegseth's replacement.
I'm not going to go with the NPR there. I'm going to go with the president on the White House lawn. That's just call me crazy. Anyone talk to you about the Pope today?
No, I was not expecting to get asked about the Pope.
I was just wondering if that was chatter in the. What do you do when Congress is gone? There's nothing to cover, Olivia.
So there are things that we call evergreen stories, and there's stories where there's not a certain time limit of, like they will always be timely in stories. So it means we can kind of go back and work on these stories that when Congress is busy and you don't have much time, they kind of get pushed to the wayside. So I'm finishing up a story that I'm going to be excited to talk to you about. I don't want to preview it because there is also a long history of reporters in Washington hearing what other reporters are working on and then trying to beat them to the punch. So
No one will hear if you tell me right now, Olivia. No one will know.
Yeah, exactly.
So, when do you expect to drop it?
Homework. You did give me home. I'm having it to my editor today, and so I can get back to you on the timing. I'll side chat you on that.
All right.
But it does relate to veterans, and it's an interesting story that's inside and outside the Beltway.
All right. Doug Collins is coming on tomorrow, so if you have anything I should ask him, send it my way. I'll be happy to ask the secretary. Yeah.
Perfect.
Olivia, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say you gave me homework on one question from last week.
Oh, yes. What is it? Is it one bill or many?
Well, so technically, practically speaking, each committee marks it up, and it's going to be bundled by the budget committee stitching them together. But technically, they can do three, which is one for the debt ceiling, one for spending, and one for taxes. But at this moment, we're expecting to just be one big bill.
And a timeline?
They're still hoping for around Memorial Day weekend, but we think that that's a pretty ambitious timeline. So here to be proven wrong, but
I hope it's
that's
faster than that. Olivia Beavers, thank you for joining me. Follow her at on X at Olivia_Beavers. Now I want to ask all of you to follow me to Consumer Cellular. I made the switch to Consumer Cellular last week, told you all about it. I want you to consider it now. Savings without sacrifice. Great, reliable, crystal clear service. Same as all the big carriers, only much less expensive. Takes about 20 minutes to switch. You can keep your phone number if you want, or you can get a new one. You can keep all your contacts, or you can leave them behind. It's up to you. The people that answer the phone are here in the United States. And you'll be talking to a real live American within less than half a minute of your beginning the call. Usually it's under 20 seconds. You have to make one choice on the menu. And the menu is press 1, press 2, press 3. But then you go right to a live person. Consumer Cellular matches the excellence, whatever your carrier is, whether it's AT&T or Verizon or T-Mobile. Consumer Cellular matches exactly the quality that you're used to. You'll never know the difference, except on the bottom line. You'll save a lot of money. Now, their basic plan, 2 lines, unlimited data, $60. But the average person over 50 doesn't use 8 gigs or more. They don't use anything like a plan that would require unlimited data. They just don't want to get whacked, right? They're afraid, well, if I don't have a unlimited data plan, I'll get whacked. No, you won't. They'll be able to walk you through what kind of usage you have and the best plan for you. But the standard plan, if you want unlimited data, is 2 lines for $60 a month. You get your second month free if you use my name, Hugh, or go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. That's consumercellular.com/Hugh. Or call 1-800-411-4454, 1-800-411-4454. Archbishop Chaput, the Archbishop Emeritus of Philadelphia, you heard him on Friday in an interview I play on Good Friday, which is a Salem holiday. So it's a pre-recorded show. And I always play the interview with Archbishop Chaput about his book, Things Worth Dying For. Well, the Archbishop posted at First Things this morning a piece about Francis after his death was announced that I think is on point. The Archbishop writes, I have personal memories of Pope Francis that I greatly value. A friendly and generous working relationship at the 1997 Synod on America when we were both newly appointed archbishops. His personal welcome and warmth at Rome's 2014 Humanum Conference, and the extraordinary success of his 2015 visit to Philadelphia for the 8th World Meeting of Families. He devoted himself to serving the Church and her people in the ways he felt the times demanded. As a brother in the faith and as a successor of Peter, he deserves our ongoing prayers for his eternal life in the presence of the God that he loved. Having said that, an interregnum between papacies is a time for candor. The lack of it, given today's challenges, is too expensive. In many ways, whatever its strength, Francis's pontificate was inadequate to the real issues facing the Church. He had no direct involvement in the Second Vatican Council and seemed to resent the legacy of his immediate predecessors who did, men who worked and suffered to incarnate the Council's teachings faithfully into Catholic life. His personality tended towards the temperamental and autocratic. He resisted even loyal criticism. He had a pattern of ambiguity and loose words that sowed confusion and conflict. In the face of deep cultural fractures on matters of sexual behavior and identity, Francis condemned gender ideology, but seemed to downplay a compelling Christian theology of the body. He was impatient with canon law and proper procedure. His signature project, synodality, was heavy on process and deficient in clarity. Despite an Despite an inspiring outreach to society's margins, his papacy lacked a confident, dynamic, evangelical zeal, the intellectual excellence to sustain a salvific and not merely ethical Christian witness in a skeptical modern world was likewise absent. What the church needs going forward is a leader who can marry personal simplicity with a passion for converting the world to Jesus Christ, a leader who has a heart of courage and a keen intellect to match it. Anything less won't work. That's it. Now, I think that's right over the target. I think that's a bullseye. If you want that, if you want to send it to a friend of yours, I posted it over at my X account at Hugh Hewitt, and I'll post the beginning of this program and that as my opening monologue at my YouTube channel, which I hope you'll consider subscribing to as well. We put everything up there, so the first and the third segment of today's show will be on the YouTube channel. Now I want to go back to Friday night. I was on Brett Baer's special report. I'll be on Hannity tonight with Sean, for those of you who are wondering and eagerly awaiting the next pop-up on Fox. Will be tonight in the 9 p.m. hour on Sean Hannity's show. But I was on Friday night with Brett, and the question was about Senator Van Hollen's trek down to El Salvador, and it came this way, cut number 2.
Hugh, what is your take on all of this as we're digesting all this information that's coming on all sides of this case and what it means broader for the administration policy?
I think the broad take, Brett, is there's a family feud within the Democratic Party between the ascendant left, which is Bernie Sanders and AOC, and I think Chris Van Hollen's trying to put down a marker there. And the ascendant left is socialist, it's DEI and CRT. It junked the defund the police stuff, and it's added now being anti-pro-Israel, and it's added being anti-immigration. And so Donald Trump, they're basically polarizing against everything Donald Trump is for, and that's going to cause a deep split in the Democratic Party because some of them are part of the old liberal left coalition that got behind Joe Biden in 2020. But the AOC, Bernie, Van Hollen, that's a hard left version of the Democratic Party that will be a much smaller version of the Democratic Party. And they can't stay anti-illegal immigrant because that's not where the country is. So I think that's exactly what's going on, is that Chris Van Hollen went to El Salvador to try and out AOC. But you can't out AOC unless you're Rashida Tlaib, and not even AOC wants to go that far nut. And therefore, Chris Van Hollen, he's running for president, obviously. He's just trying to get out there on the left edge of the Democratic Party. The other article that came out today in First Things about the late Francis was by Robert Reno, R.R. Reno. And it's in First Things as well. I will link to it on my X account. I want to read it to you right now. It's titled, "The Jesuit Pope. A remarkable man has passed from the scene," writes Reno. The Society of Jesus got its start nearly 500 years ago and soon grew to become the most influential and feared religious order in post-Reformation Europe. Francis was the first Jesuit elected to the chair of St. Peter, a historic milestone that defined his tenure as chief pastor of the Catholic Church. Historians will look back and weigh the specific achievements and failures of his 12 years as Pope, but the tone, tenor, and tendency of his leadership of the Church reflected the distinctive personality of the Society of Jesus, colored by his own fiery temperament. Jesuits are operators, writes Reno. It's encouraged by their formation. At the center of their training are the spiritual exercises, a pattern of meditation and prayer established by the founder of the Society of Jesus, St. Ignatius of Loyola. The exercises are undertaken in solitude. Their purpose is to make God immediate so that the Jesuit in formation can receive God's distinct mission for him and him alone. I have undertaken an 8-day version of the spiritual exercises. The 30-day version is required for Jesuits at various stages of their formation. I can report that it is a very powerful tool for discerning the one thing God is calling you to do. The effect of this formation is holy single-mindedness, which often produces an impatience with impediments, even those created by moral and religious duties. For example, St. Ignatius allowed members of his order to dispense with the historic obligation of clergy to say the divine office, the morning and evening prayers known as the breviary. They could do so if their apostolic mission required. Matteo Ricci, a Jesuit who went to China in the 16th century, famously dispensed with clerical garb and took on the appearance of a Confucian sage the better to evangelize Chinese elites. In the 17th and 18th century, Jesuits wormed their way into royal courts, famous as confessors who were not too demanding. They were accused of permitting duplicity, especially in their own ministries. During that era, the term Jesuitical was coined. It means making nice distinctions that turn prohibitions into permissions. All of this and more was akin to St. Ignatius' suspension of the obligation to say the divine office. One must do what is necessary to succeed in one's mission assigned by God, as Reno writes. The pontificate of Pope Francis manifested a Jesuit impatience with constraining tradition and limiting rules. For many centuries, the Archbishop of Milan and the Patriarch of Venice were cardinals. Today, neither is a cardinal. It was a venerable tradition that Pope Francis broke away from. Although Amoris Laetitia, the controversial document that seems to permit divorced and remarried Catholics to receive communion, features nice and, dare I say, Jesuitical reasoning, Pope Francis appears to have cared little about the theological details. What mattered was the outcome. In my estimation, writes Reno, this approach arose from a subtle cultural political calculation that a very moderate concession to the sexual revolution would buy time, allowing the Catholic Church to navigate the choppy waters of today's non-traditional attitudes towards sex, marriage, and many other intimate aspects of life. If this is the case, I must allow that it was not a foolish move on the chessboard of cultural politics. Under his leadership, the Catholic Church made no significant change to the teachings that are at odds with the sexual revolution. I think Francis was also making a clever move in the contest between the German Church and Rome. The small concession of allowing divorced and remarried Catholics to receive communion, along with rhetorical gestures suggesting much greater concessions were forthcoming, allowed Francis to stiff-arm the German demands for formal and official accommodations to the sexual revolution. As I noted, Jesuits are operators. A similar path was taken with the Chinese Church. A secret agreement was made with the Chinese Communist Party concerning the governance of the church in China. No surprise there, secrecy is the ideal métier for a Jesuit, allowing for all the matters to be dealt with behind closed doors, relying on diplomacy and intrigue. If China becomes a Catholic nation in the next 100 years, Francis will have been vindicated in his tactics. Pope Francis's most widely read encyclical was Laudato Si. It too was politically clever. The topic addressed was environmentalism, especially climate change. This represented a shift away from marriage, abortion, and sexual ethics, themes treated by John Paul II and Benedict. Catholic teachings on these topics are unpopular with Western elites. By contrast, they are enthusiastic about climate change and climate activism, and at points, Laudato Si sounds like a UN panel on climate change. Yet the encyclical also includes what is, in effect, a denunciation of Western capitalist and technological culture. Again, a remarkable political move, cozying up to Western elites while undermining the economic, cultural foundations of their power. In his relations with the United States, Pope Francis was less nimble. The effort to suppress the Latin Mass in the United States was ham-fisted. Perhaps the political missteps arose because Francis's inner circle were troubled by the combination of faith and vitality in American Catholicism, a combination that made the American bishops harder to manipulate. Or maybe it reflected the habitual anti-Americanism of Latin Americans of his generation. Underscore that sentence. Or maybe it reflected the habitual anti-Americanism of Latin Americans of his generation. because that's what I think it was. Whatever the cause, it was the exception to the usual misdirection and double messaging that characterized his style of governance. Argentines have a joke about General Juan Perón. He's sitting in the back of his limousine as it approaches an intersection. The driver leans back, asks, "Generale, which way should I turn?" Perón answers, "Signal left, turn right." The same joke could be told about many Jesuits. Pope Francis was a Peronist and a Jesuit. His pontificate amounted to 12 years of maneuvering, sometimes artfully, sometimes not so artfully. Everything was made into an instrument, including doctrine, synodal meetings, church offices, and more. In this regard, the pontificate was purely personal, resting in the mystery of the one thing that God was calling Jorge Bergoglio to do as a soldier of Christ. As a result, the pontificate's divisive character dies with him, leaving little other than astonishment. Arguably, Pope Francis was the most famous person on the planet. There are 1.4 billion Catholics. A lot of people who aren't Catholic follow him. A lot of people loved him. I'm going to replay an interview I did with Vim Venders, the film director from 2018. He made a movie about Francis. He loved Francis. I've read you Archbishop Chet Pugh's reminiscences and R.R. Reno, the editor of First Things. Reno ends his essay, "I pray for the repose of Pope Francis's soul." Every good Catholic should. May he rest in the arms of Christ, whom he sought so ardently to serve. Amen. Eternal rest grant unto him, O Lord, and may perpetual light shine on Francis. May he rest in peace. Amen. But I do think absolutely that Reno is correct when he said Francis's pontificate reflected the habitual anti-Americanism of Latin Americans of his generation. I mean, I really thought they just didn't like Americans. And that's a Latin American, South American thing. And when I visited the Metropolitan Cathedral in Argentina after he had been made Pope, I realized that the tomb of the president, of the founder of the Republic, and maybe the tomb of the unknown soldier is inside the cathedral. There's like no separation of church and state in Argentina. It's the Catholic Church and it's the state. And that's kind of a weird thing. I wonder if the cardinals thought about that. All I have to say, and if any of you are bound for Rome in the company of a cardinal, just whisper to them, please. It's been since 1995 that the Roman Catholic Church has had a leader who was under 75 years of age. In 1994, John Paul II was 74. So in 1995, he turned, and we've had two giants, right? John Paul II is a saint because he was a giant. Benedict is going to be a doctor of the church. So two giants are tough to follow. So I have a little bit of sympathy for Francis. He's following in the footsteps of giants, and it couldn't have been easy. Plus, he's a Jesuit. That couldn't have been easy. All I would like now is someone that the cardinals could agree will result in more people understanding the message of Christ, more people going to Mass, and more young men called to being priests, or older men, or younger men, middle-aged men, men who are eligible, good men, to become priests. We've been coasting along at 400,000 priests for 25 years. We need vocations up. Mass attendance is down around the world. We need some energy. We really do need some leadership and some energy. Don't need new doctrine. Doctrine is great. We don't need tricks or gimmicks. We need a good communicator like John Paul II and a great intellect like Benedict. And it doesn't hurt to have a gentle touch like Francis. But we really got to have energy and intellect. Energy and intellect. All right, Cardinals, as you gather, there are 185 of you. I thought John Paul said there could only be 120 or something like that, but I don't know the rule. There are 185 Cardinals who are eligible to vote. And do your jobs well, gentlemen. It matters a lot after the last 13 years. So happy to welcome back Arthur Brooks. Arthur is a professor at Harvard Business School. He's the author of my favorite book that Arthur has done. Is called From Strength to Strength. But his bestseller is the one he did with Oprah, Build the Life You Want. Arthur, good to see you again. I hope you had a wonderful Easter.
Happy Easter, you too. And I'm glad to hear that that's your favorite book. You're my favorite radio show host, so we can work together.
Okay, we're tied. Arthur, I want to talk to you about two things. If either the corporation of Harvard, the people who make up the trustees of the Harvard Corporation, or the cardinals going into conclave, if they picked you to run their institutions, either Harvard or the Catholic Church, I'd be happy. So I want to talk to you about both of those institutions, but let's start with the Pope. What did you think is the legacy of Francis?
So it's a good question. You know, we have a tendency to look at the leader of any big national, transnational organization, anything huge, in terms of current politics. That's not what we're going to be thinking about. He was controversial at times. There was some confusion around what he said at times because it was interpreted in the context of what people were talking about in the political moment. But I think that what he'll be remembered for are the many good things that he talked about. He was very traditional with respect to his condemnation of the imperialism of the new kind cultural movements, you know, trying to spread these weird Western ideas that were not consistent with the Catholic faith into places like Africa. He was very hostile to that. He talked a lot about the fact that there in fact is evil in the world, but most importantly, he was a shepherd. And he talked about the fact that the Catholic Church needed to be shepherds that smelled like the sheep and to bring the church closer to the people. I think that's how he'll be remembered in a very positive way.
Now, I read a couple essays in the first hour, one by Archbishop Chaput, one by R.R. Reno. In the R.R. Reno essay, he writes, Pope Francis's papacy reflected the habitual anti-Americanism of the Latin Americans of his generation. I believe that. I felt that. I don't know that it matters to the rest of the world, but I kind of thought he didn't like us much.
Yeah, Pope Francis, like many people around the world, doesn't understand, not just Americans, he doesn't understand the magic of American Catholicism. Here's the weird thing about American Catholicism. Catholicism in the United States is not the church of the empire, the church of the powerful. Look, Hugh, as you know, I've lived off and on in Spain for the past 35 years. And to be Catholic is to be part of the establishment. To be Catholic in America is to be the outsider. It's to be the immigrant. I mean, these are the churches in these neighborhoods that people scrapped to just be able to build. These were the people that were not accepted in the local hospitals, the local universities, which is why they started these great institutions in the United States. And most people that come from these countries where the Catholic Church is part of the establishment don't get the fact that the magic of American Catholicism, which is what the world needs more of, is an institution that represents everybody with radical human equality and a whole culture of opportunity as something that God wants for all of us.
When you say the world needs more of American Catholicism, that will strike the German bishops quite oddly. What do you mean by that?
Well, again, in Germany, for example, the Catholic Church is a representation of power, of institutionalized power, because the Roman Catholic Church over last 2 millennia, as Europe was developing, it was the seat of power. The Vatican was very powerful. I understand that, but again, when it came to the United States, it came on the boats with the immigrants who didn't have absolutely anything. And so, if the German bishops, if they want to represent the outsiders, they need a church, a poor church for the poor. That's the American Roman Catholic Church that stands for freedom and opportunity and radical equality, notwithstanding where you were born. That's what we need more of. And that's the spirit of American Catholicism.
Now, let me ask you a specific question that comes from the book I referenced, From Strength to Strength, which I've told so many people to read. I think it's probably changed more lives than any other book of the last decade. From Strength to Strength is about where you find yourself in your life and what you ought to do. The first comment I had about the passing of the Pope after saying a prayer for his soul today was that it's been since 1995, Arthur, that the Catholic Church has had a Pope who is 75 years or younger. So for the last 30 years, we've been led by men who are 75 years or older. I don't think that's healthy. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably was not the original intention. Of course, I'm talking about the intention of the Holy Spirit. So who am I to say? But by the way, it's the same problem in American politics.
Yes.
As you know, I mean, it's been a long time since we've had a president who's, of an age where we would actually hire a CEO, for Pete's sake. And that becomes really, really problematic. And I think there's a time that will come in many institutions like the American presidency, perhaps even the Vatican, where we'll start asking what is the appropriate age beyond which we shouldn't have a chief executive. And that's exactly why Pope Benedict retired, is because he said that he was too old to actually serve. And that's the reason that bishops are asked to retire at the age of 75. So I think that the time is coming when the Catholic Church is going to probably prayerfully rethink that.
Now, have you followed, I've only casually followed who the conclave will be populated by, because I kept looking for Archbishop Gomez to show up on there. He leads the country's largest archdiocese in Los Angeles. He was born in Mexico City. He's a member of Opus Dei. I thought for sure he would have been made a cardinal by now, but he wasn't. And I think part of that was Francis's ongoing argument with the American Church. Given who Francis has sent in, do you expect any particular kind of pope to come out the other end?
It's impossible to predict. I mean, everybody thought that coming out of Pope Paul VI that John Paul I, who reigned for a month, and then John Paul II would be in that style. And John Paul II wound up being the pivotal figure in resolving the Cold War without war and bringing more of the world into global democracy, also converting more souls for the Catholic Church than anybody else. That was not what anybody expected. Similarly, nobody expected Pope Francis to be exactly who he was, because he behaved in an entirely different way than when he was the cardinal, the Archbishop of Buenos Aires. So the truth of the matter is that we're very bad at predicting, because people are different when they have the white hat than the way they are when they're in the College of Cardinals. So the Holy Spirit has a few tricks up his sleeve, I dare say, and I can't predict very well, and I probably wouldn't even if I could.
Oh, well, we've got at least 24 days. No, I've done my math wrong. At least 15 days to start the conclave, and it might be more than 20 days before we start. And it's going to be unwieldy because it's larger than John Paul II wanted it to be. And everyone saw the movie Conclave. It doesn't work that way as far as I understand it. Do you think it works that way at all?
I didn't see Conclave, and the truth is I don't understand Vaticanology at all. And I think, Washington, D.C. is impossible for me to understand. So the Vatican, wow. So I don't know.
Okay, so if anyone comes out of this who is not from Europe and not from America, will you be relieved or will you be alarmed?
It'll really depend on who the person is, how the man is, and how the man governs, how the man shepherds the church, because there's so many good people from all over the world. I mean, some of these African cardinals are so great. And the truth of the matter is that the future of the Roman Catholic Church around the world, it might just be in Africa, right, Hugh?
It might be. Well, I began the show by pointing, the only two statistics I came up with, besides the age thing, is that the number of priests in the world has hovered around 400,000 for on almost 35 years now, and they're getting older. The average age is getting older and older and older, and that mass attendance has been going down year after year, though population is going up. So to me, the great challenge for the next pope is to get mass attendance up and the average age of the priest down. I think that's in a nutshell what they need to do.
Yeah, for sure. As an organizational matter, that's what they need to do. And they actually need to the next pope needs to be able to create a social movement toward meaning. I mean, what's really driven depression up, what's driven anxiety up, loneliness up, self-harm up, addiction up, especially for people under 35, has to do with the lack of meaning. And the principal culprit for the lack of meaning is the secularization of our society. The truth is, if somebody wants to have more meaning in their life, the first thing they need to do is to transcend the boring tedium of their ordinary life. And there's no better way to do that than to look upward to the divine. The Catholic Church has been specializing in that for a very, very long time, and getting back to its knitting on saving souls, giving them meaning. That really could rejuvenate society around the world and really turn us around. So I think that's the movement the spirit of movement that we need.
Arthur, if you can stand by, I would love to talk to you in the next segment about Harvard, because that's also on people's frontal lobe. I don't know what your time constraint is. We got to take about a 4-minute break.
And the Vatican of higher ed?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And unfortunately, it's less susceptible to change than the church. So we'll find out what Arthur Brooks thinks about the Vatican of higher ed. Arthur teaches at Harvard Business School, formerly the head of the American Enterprise Institute. His most recent books are From Strength to Strength, which is really my favorite. And then the book he co-authored with Oprah, Build the Life You Want. And that sells and sells and sells. Arthur, are you working on another book right now?
I am. I've got one coming out next April called The Meaning of Your Life: How to Find Deep Purpose in an Age of Emptiness. And it really looks at the brain and how our modern life is actually making meaning harder and harder to find. That's actually behind all of our mental health crises in America and around the world today. And if I do my job, I'm gonna actually help people understand what's going on in their heads and how they can fix it.
I am looking forward to that already. Would you give that to the corporation, please, to the members of the corporation? Now, last time I saw Arthur, he was actually a year or 2 years ago in June when he addressed my 45th college reunion. I don't know how they snuck him in. He got past the thought police. They were unaware that Arthur might actually be center right because everyone else was way left. Arthur, Harvard's broken, and I know they're pushing back against the Trump administration. Let's put that aside. They've been found guilty of discriminating on the basis of race. They have had wild outbreaks of anti-Semitism. The intellectual diversity there, except for you and perhaps some colleagues at the business school, is not great. Harvey Mansfield can't live forever. What's that university got to do? And I think they overestimate, by the way, their standing in the society greatly. How do you assess their situation right now?
So Harvard has been around for a long time and has navigated a lot of different crises. And the truth is that Harvard is going to continue to exist and it will be okay. But this is an opportunity for, like it would be for any institution, to actually make some changes that need to be made. The good news about it is that we have a very good president. I mean, it went through a bunch of problems, obviously. We had a president who didn't last very long because of the October 7th attacks and our very poor reaction to it. But her replacement, which is our former provost, a guy named Alan Garber, he's really good. He's strong. I've seen him actually stand up to radical voices inside the university. He's got good ideas. He's a naturally moderate person. He wants to make changes, and I think he actually will. Not to mention the fact that, as you know, one of your fellow constitutional conservatives, John Manning, is the new provost, the old head of the law school, and he's another conservative on Harvard's campus, and he's actually the provost of the university.
Now, is Mr. Garber, President Garber, interim or is he permanent now?
He's permanent now. He was the interim president. He was made the permanent president. He's very well liked and very trusted on campus. He's a steady hand on the tiller during a very, very hard time. He inherited a whole lot of problems and he recognizes that. I mean, he wasn't born yesterday. He's not pretending that everything is great all the time. And he's been able to solve a lot of problems in the past. So I actually am pretty confident. I also think that, hardened positions, they generally tend to soften as time goes on. And I think that probably 1 year from now, you're going to be a lot happier with what Harvard is doing, because I think that the leadership sees the current crisis as an opportunity to make a lot of the changes that actually have to be made. Once again, let's point out that the fact that the federal government right now is intervening in the ideology of Harvard, trying to say that we need to have a more open ideology, but actually trying to dictate what we will do ideologically. I don't like that, but that's not when the problem started. The problem started 15 years ago with the Obama administration that was actually insisting on DEI things in with respect to hiring and with respect to grants. And so there's nothing new about this. We were getting bullied by past administrations, and now we're figuring out how to not get bullied by this one. But I'm actually pretty confident that there's going to be a solution. I mean, now you and I both know it's going to be okay.
Well, Harvard's not going anywhere, not with a $53 billion endowment, but they might go without a lot of federal subsidies and with ongoing litigation absent a more holistic view. Here's my big objection. Answer it if you can, or tell me not to worry about it. Is they get a 5-page letter, which is actually fairly reasonably well written. Whether or not it was intended to go out is a debate right now. But it was a well-written letter. I read it very closely. It was long. It had 6 subject matter. Within 72 hours, the answer comes back from President Garber. No, not now, not ever, never, no, no, no. And I thought, 72 hours? Really? Couldn't you have said, well, let's get together and talk? What was the advantage, other than virtue signaling, of a return volley that was, aimed at the head of the senders?
So I saw that as actually like most conflicts. Most conflicts are started on the basis of miscalculations and errors. And the reason is because most of the time in armed conflict, for example, as you know better than anybody, this is your area of real expertise. People don't want them, but then there's an error in brinksmanship and is dangerous. And I see that letter going out, it went out before it was supposed to, and I think
Correct.
it was interpreted as take it or leave it, which it probably wasn't intended because it went out before it was supposed to, and so the response was to a letter that they weren't supposed to get in the first place. So I think it was an error as a response to an error, and now they're going to have to walk it back. And my strong assumption is that they will.
Well, now, would Harvard's culture, and all I know of it is 2 days on campus 2 years ago. Like, I really don't know what the culture is now. Would Garber consider just calling up the president and say, can I come down and talk to you? Because it seems to me that would be the best in everyone's interest.
I don't know. It's a good question. I haven't talked to Alan Garber about this, and I sure would be happy to help in any way. That's for sure. I mean, I know you love Harvard. You've told me that. You can't change your heart. You had some of the best years of your life there, and the truth is, I love it too. But I recognize the problems that are there, and I think the opportunity, again, in any organization, a crisis that you have like this is an entrepreneurial opportunity to become much better than you were in the past, and that's how this has to be viewed.
Well, now, I'll broaden out the lens. It's not just Harvard, it's higher ed. There was my law school was racked by controversy after controversy, as was the University of Michigan over the last many years. Columbia is a mess. UCLA was basically a ghetto for Jews in the aftermath of 10/7, where they were not even allowed access to some building. In other words, we have a crisis outside of Hillsdale College and maybe Grove City that seems to me to be endemic, Arthur Brooks. How do we fix that?
Yeah, so the truth of the matter is that the crisis in higher ed was building for a very long time. And once again, a lot of it had to do with the guidance that was pushed through into higher ed during the Obama administration that was really pushing a lot of ideology into what they were doing and empowering certain voices. That was making it harder and harder to have any sort of ideological balance on these campuses. The trouble is that it wasn't apparent to the outside world until it exploded. And that's great. When something explodes like that and everybody knows about it, you can actually start doing some good about it. But I'm telling you, in 2019, 2020, I was saying, whoa, you guys, this is a real problem all across higher education, because that's when I came back. And, I had a natural experiment, Hugh. I was at Syracuse for a long time. I left at the end of 2008. I was gone for 11 years to be president of AEI. I didn't pay attention to higher ed very much. And I came back to my happy home where the students were happier than the professors and everybody was getting along. And in 2019, it was like, Rip Van Winkle coming back after 20 years of sleep. It was like, what is this place? What happened? The American Revolution? What happened? And the truth of the matter, it was just so dramatic what had happened. And what had happened was that the federal government had been messing around inside higher education this entire time and had built this culture, this combustible culture, and then it blew up. And that's good.
Well, I only have one bit of advice for President Gardner, which is call you, and then you give him lots of advice. Arthur, I look forward to talking to you next spring when the next book is out, if not before. Thank you for your time today on both of these subjects of great importance. Arthur Brooks from Harvard Business School, author of From Strength to Strength and Build the Life You Want. 1-800-520-1234 is my phone number, America. 1-800-520-1234. Going to take some calls on what you think about both the next pope, what attributes ought he to have, and whether or not Arthur Brooks's optimism about Harvard and the Ivies and higher ed generally is justified. In the meantime, I got to check the markets. Again, my phone number is 1-800-520-1234. If you're going to comment on the Pope, you got to be Catholic. All right, I'm really not interested in a fanatic telling me that the Pope is from Babylon and goes by a bad name. I don't need any of that kind of nuttery. 1-800-520-1234 if you're not insane about the Pope. I'd prefer if you were actually a Catholic and had some investment in it. Let me tell you about what happened on the market today, brought to you by AmericanFederal.com. American Federal buys and sells gold. The Dow fell 972 points today, was down 2.5%. The S&P was down 2.36%. The NASDAQ was down 2.5%. And gold was up 3.18% to $3,433 an ounce. That's right. Today, the price of gold is at $3,434 an ounce. And Nick Grovich was right on the money. He said it's going to hang around 3,000 for a bit and then climb, which is exactly what it's done. Didn't hang around very long, hung around for maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, but that's why you deal with Nick Grovich. He actually knows what he's talking about. He's been doing this for 40 plus years. Call him up at 800-221-7694. If you're going to buy gold or you're going to sell gold, do it with Nick, because he and his team are honest, straightforward, and transparent. How much do you want to buy? Then this is the commission. When does your money get here? That's when we'll fill the commission. That's when we'll fill the order and take our commission. What do you want to sell me? I got to assay it. You have to send it to us. We have to take a look at it and find out whether or not it's fool's gold or the real deal, 24 karat or whatever it is. Maybe you've got Krugerrands. Maybe you got a coin collection you want to unload. Nick does that too. But mostly what he does is buy and sell your gold in Krugerrands and American Eagles and Maple Leafs. And all I ever do is the same I've always done, which is buy it every year. Now I buy it from American Federal. Did it in January. Happy that I did. It was significantly less expensive than it is now, but I'm not trading it. I don't believe in that. I believe buy and hold, buy and hold, buy and hold. And don't look up, don't look down. The American market will be fine. Buy the dip if you're one of those people, but generally I believe in dollar cost average investing, which is you put the same amount of money into the market the same day every month after payday, or every quarter or every year if you're buying a particular stock or mutual fund, and diversify. And I believe that precious metals ought to be a part of any portfolio. So I don't make recommendations, but I do tell you that gold has more than kept pace with inflation for the past 100 years. And boy, it's been giddying up a lot ahead of inflation for the last 2 months. But if you want to talk to Nick about this, 800-221-7694. Now, I don't know if I have any. Yes, I do. I have Kyle is on line one. Where are you calling from, Kyle?
Labas, Mr. Hewitt. This is your old friend, Kyle.
And Kyle, what happened to you? He fell out. Okay, you're back. Go ahead, Kyle.
Yes, Carl.
Carl, good to talk to you. How are you?
I'm good, my friend. It's been many years since RNC, I think, the last time I saw you.
Yeah, people think you're actually Count Dracula, but you're not. You're Carl.
No, I am not Count Dracula.
Or Count Chocula, for that matter. You're not.
I am cuter.
Yes, you are. But it was in St. Paul,
anyway.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how are you?
I'm doing good, my friend. I listen to you pretty much every day. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the difference that you brought up so astutely between the differences between the Catholic Church in different countries. Like in Lithuania, we have what is known as the Hill of Crosses. Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not. I've been to Lithuania, but I haven't been to the Hill of Crosses.
Oh, I cannot believe you did not see that. That is a very, very heartwarming and powerful area where there are literally thousands and thousands of crosses that people have put up over the many, many years. Very powerful. You should go online at least to check it out, or if you ever get to Lithuania again.
Carl, wait, I want you to wait on hold till I come back, because I want to get your take on the Pope. And Catholics from different countries have different points of view on the papacy. Carl will give us his. 1-800-520-1234 if you want to join in the conversation. Carl is on line one. Carl's an old friend of the program. This program's been on since 2000. Carl's been calling off and on. Well, it's been many years since I've talked to him. So, Carl, what do you think the next Pope needs to be?
I think the next Pope needs to be a younger person. I mean, not like 40, 50 years old, but certainly between 60, 70 at the most, I think is appropriate to deal with the problems of the world as it is today with a better grasp and not afraid to take stands and think out of the box. You know, you talked about Jesuits before.
Yep.
I have to share a story with you. You know, I am in Cleveland here.
Yes.
And I had family that helped to literally build a brand new Catholic community called Our Lady of Perpetual Help in Cleveland, Ohio. And many Lithuanian immigrants. It was a Lithuanian parish. And it was like the Cadillac of Catholic grade schools for many, many years. And ultimately, the old pastor, Father Joseph Angelaitis, became, old and had to move into assisted living. They brought in a Jesuit priest, and immediately, so stubborn, so bullheaded, he ruined the parish. Now the parish is nothing but a shell of itself. So when people talk about Jesuits with love and respect, I love and respect the priesthood, don't get me wrong. But the Jesuit order, in many ways, some people say, maybe the devil's workshop.
Well, they did very good. They did very good work for hundreds of years, Carl. Let's not go overboard.
Yes.
They're pretty ideological now, and
Yes.
they remain very much men of the left. And I would recommend everyone Reno's article in First Things. I'll post that over on my X account. But I'm sad to hear about your project there, and I hope you get it reclaimed. Carl, thank you. Good to hear from you. I got to move on to Marty in Detroit. 1-800-520-1234. Marty, how are you?
Good, Hugh. Thanks for taking my call. I would like to see a pope. Well, I'm the last caller, not a Jesuit. I agree. Obviously, Jesuits never should have been popes. They were supposed to defend the papacy, not become one. But aside from that, more of a traditional-minded in the sense that focusing on some of the people who enjoy the Latin Mass, the extraordinary form. Nothing wrong with the Novus Ordo. Nothing wrong with the mission of Vatican II. But I think before we reach out to the other houses in the world that Vatican II wants us to do in Lumen Gentium, we maybe should consider cleaning up our own house spiritually first. I think then we would have more success.
Now, there are a lot of people who have no idea what you're talking about, Marty, because they don't speak Catholic. But would you explain for people who don't speak Catholic what you just said? I get it, but not a lot of people do.
Sure. Okay. So obviously Vatican II, Lumen Gentium, one of the documents, which is a great document, how the church should, reach out to the external world, aside from itself, to present itself. But I think in that way, we became the world. We didn't teach the world what we were. We became like the world. And along with that, we lost the extraordinary form of the Mass, which was instituted at Tridentine. So Trent, it was a Tridentine Mass when Pius V was Pope, and that was a Mass for hundreds of years. We changed everything. We changed it to the Novus Ordo, which is the new Mass, which was probably what 95% of the Catholics go to. And it's a beautiful Mass. But there was something sacred and holy that made the Tridentine Mass special. We kind of became... like I said, we became the world by changing our Mass. We became the world by reaching out to the world instead of teaching them what we were and how, special and holy and sacred.
Now, because I speak Catholic, you're not a member of the Society of Pius X, are you?
No.
Yeah. See, I can tell that because my old friend David Allen White, who passed away this year, was. And, of course, he wouldn't say anything good about the new Mass. And I've always been, whatever floats your boat, go to church, right?
Yes, for sure. Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
I'm not mad at anyone. I don't know why Francis went out of his way to pick fights with traditional Latin Rite Catholic. I really don't. What was the upside there?
And it was also a growing Mass for a lot of young people. So isn't that what you'd want? And I don't go to strict. I go to both. I go to fortunately, I'm in a parish in Detroit that has the Novus Ordo or the Tridentine Mass. So I don't go to one. I go to one which is convenient for my time, whether it's Saturday or Sunday, and they're both beautiful. But why take one of them away? I don't understand.
That's well put. I have a little confession. I go to the one that's shortest, and usually it's the 7 a.m. Mass with no bad music in it. So
that's why I go to the Saturday Mass. It's shorter. When I go Sunday, it's Latin. When I go Saturday, it's
well, Latin, at least, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be longer, though. You see, there's a trade-off there. And the Catholics...
I look at my schedule.
What about my point that since 1995, our popes have been 75 years or older. So in other words,
Yeah,
we have been ancient for 30 years.
Right. I would love to see an African pope because personal opinion, I think they're very devout and very, they've lived not a martyr's life, but a political martyr's life, some of them.
Many have been persecuted. Cardinal Sarah is 1 month shy of aging out of the conclave.
80 years old.
No, he's 79. He gets to go. He gets to vote.
Oh, he does?
He does.
Okay.
He gets a vote. So
Cardinal Renzi doesn't, though. He's 92.
That's it. But I do think there's some Cardinal Dolan obviously gets one. Our friend from St. Louis, whose name is escaping me right now, gets one. There are some conservative voices in that conclave, but I have no idea. It's actually kind of a hodgepodge. I think Francis threw darts when he was picking cardinals. I really do.
I don't have a lot of confidence because of the ones he picked for more traditional. But the Holy Spirit will.
Well, we can only pray. We can pray. Coming up after the top of the hour, Senator Tom Cotton joins me, and Jonathan Chandra is going to join me from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. The talks on Saturday in Rome about whether or not the United States can come to an understanding with Iran. I am not an optimist about that. We'll talk with Senator Cotton and Jonathan about that. I do want to close a loop with you. I made the switch to consumer cellular over the weekend. You can too. It's remarkably easy. You can do one of two things. You can keep your old phone number, keep your old contacts, keep your old device, or you get a new device and a new phone number and start over. You can do what I did and get a second device in order to keep it limited to just your family and friends and leave it on all the time. But most of you only want one device, and I get that. They've got a very good deal for people who use a lot of data. You get 2 lines, 2 phones, 2 lines for $60 a month. They also have much cheaper plans for people who use much less data. Now, if you're over 50, you're not using 8 gigs of data. You probably don't even know what a gig of data is. I don't know how big a gig of data is. I don't know if it's 5 movies or 10 movies or 5 hours of watching. I was watching a lot of screen time because the Cavs beat the Heat yesterday on Easter Sunday, so there was a lot of screen time involved in that. But I really don't know. My old plan is unlimited. My new plan is not. And the switch is easy. The quality is just as good as any other big cellular. It is fabulous. But you won't know until you make the switch. It takes less than 20 minutes. When you call, and I want to give the number correct, 800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. Or go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. And you can get all the different plans and options in front of you. For most people who use a moderate amount, or maybe you've got a teenager in the house and you want a second line for the teenager and they use a gazillion gigs, then you want the 2 lines with unlimited data for $60 a month. You'll still be saving money. Do you even know how much you pay for your cellular? I mean, if you're driving around right now, do you know how much you pay? I'll bet you don't have any idea. Here's the bottom line. If you want unlimited and you want to pay $60 a month for 2 lines, then you call 1-800-411-4454, or you go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. Either way, you'll be happy and you'll thank me. And I've been selling it hard because I like a good product whenever I bring on a new. I don't have to do this. I'm bonusing them, as they say in the business, all over the place because I want my audience to be well served. And by well served, I mean you'll like it. You'll like talking to them. You'll call 1-800-411-4454, and you'll get one screen you have to hit. If you are X, push 1, 2, or 3. After that first button, you get a person within 20 to 30 seconds, and then it's just all downhill skiing. 20 minutes, you're done, and you've saved more money in the first year of 2025 than you expected that you would ever save all your life on a cellular plan. ConsumerCellular.com/Hugh, 1-800-411-4454, 1-800-411-4454. Joined by United States Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. He's a Harvard man, undergrad and law school. I'm going to be on Hannity tonight with Alan Dershowitz. Did you have Dersh as a professor, Senator Cotton?
Hugh, it's good to be on with you. No, I did not have Professor Dershowitz when I was in law school. He was a well-known liberal professor of constitutional law. But I did attend a few debates that he had, and I have to say he was pretty good as a debater. And in those days, during the Second Intifada that anti-Israel terrorists had launched, he was pretty good debating some of those terrorist sympathizers.
Well, he's always been fearless. Let me ask you at the start, are you an optimist about these talks with Iran that Mr. Witkoff has been engaged in 2 weekends in a row, with a third round coming up quickly?
Hugh, I think it's always appropriate to approach any talks with Iran with a heavy dose of realism and skepticism, and I think that's what President Trump has said. He wants to at least give Iran a chance to make a deal to turn over its nuclear program so they can never have a nuclear weapon, as he said repeatedly. And I think last week the way he put it was it's going to give Iran a chance to live happily without death. So let's see what Iran puts on the table and whether or not they're serious. There's obviously a clear model to turn over your nuclear program. It's like Muammar Gaddafi did in 2003 in Libya, to open up the doors, to turn over all your enriched uranium and all your centrifuges, which Iran has no need for if it merely wants a civilian nuclear program. Plenty of countries in the world have civilian nuclear power that don't enrich uranium. If they insist on maintaining that enrichment capability, and especially the enriched uranium, which is near weapons grade, then I think we'll know what Iran's true intentions are.
Now, Senator, that's why I'm a little bit concerned, because after the meeting in Rome, it was announced that there would be a technical working group midweek and then round 3 in Oman. I don't know why. It's not very technical to open the doors and begin taking the centrifuges out, is it?
No, it's not. It's something that's, again, easily done. If Iran wants to actually have a deal that is enforceable and verifiable and that forecloses all paths to a potential nuclear weapon.
Now, do you think they'll ever do that? I mean, I'm just such a skeptic of this whole exercise. I understand why President Trump's doing it, but I just want people to have an appropriate level of skepticism about it.
I think an appropriate level of skepticism is highly warranted, Hugh. But then again, you could have said the same thing about Gaddafi in Libya in 2003.
Okay.
A man who was a brutal dictator, who was pursuing not just nuclear weapons, but also chemical and biological weapons, who had the blood of many Americans on his hands, who Ronald Reagan, for instance, had launched airstrikes against in 1986 in retaliation for a terrorist bombing in Germany. You would have been appropriately skeptical of Muammar Gaddafi's intentions in 2003. But he showed genuinely that he wanted to come in from the cold, and he didn't want to earn the ire of another American president. I think President Trump has made it sufficiently clear over the years in his dealings with Iran, and especially its proxies, like the Houthi rebels in Yemen, or Bashar al-Assad, or his targeting for death their terrorist mastermind Qasem Soleimani in 2020, that he is not a president to be trifled with, unlike Joe Biden or Barack Obama.
Now, in 2003, Gaddafi was looking at a credible threat of force because W had invaded Afghanistan and Iraq. Trump's not into invading countries. Does he still have the same credible level of force that W did?
Oh, sure. There's no question about that, Hugh. Again, those who would say, well, it's either we make some kind of bad half-ass deal or we're going to have war like we did in Iraq and Afghanistan are simply trying to justify a bad deal that allows Iran to keep its enrichment capabilities, its centrifuges, and its enriched uranium. President Trump has never proposed invading Iran or trying to change its government or turn it into democracy, but he has made it perfectly clear, as he has said, there will be bombing. And time again, whether it's President Trump, for instance, or Ronald Reagan, the discriminate but forceful application of military power has proven effective, especially against Iran. President Reagan, remember, sank half their Navy in 1988 after they targeted a U.S. naval vessel with a mine in the Persian Gulf. And it didn't just stop the mining of the Persian Gulf, Hugh, it stopped the Iran-Iraq war, which had seemed interminable for 8 years because Iran was afraid of what came next. After President Trump targeted Qasem Soleimani for death, Iran's terrorist mastermind in January of 2020, Iran pulled in its horns because Iran was deathly afraid of what Donald Trump might do.
Now, Senator, you voted to confirm Pete Hegseth. I applauded that. Today, President Trump took time apart from the Easter Bunny and the Easter egg roll to very forcefully say, it's fake news. I'm not mad at Pete Hegseth. He's staying. Will that quiet the Get Pete movement? Because it should.
I agree that it should, Hugh. President Trump was clear today that he supports Secretary Hegseth. I support Secretary Hegseth. I said last night that these latest stories are obviously liberal media publishing sour grapes from disgruntled former employees. He'd had to remove 3 or 4 employees last week because apparently they were leaking to the liberal media in ways designed to undermine the president and Pete Hegseth. I guess because they had policy disagreements with Pete or with Donald Trump. And that's fine. I mean, any president is always going to have people who disagree with the decision he makes. Decisions don't get to the president's desk if they're not hard and don't divide his advisors. But once the president makes the decision, everyone in the administration, especially mid-level officials who aren't confirmed by the Senate, have to salute and roger out and execute it. You don't get to run off to the New York Times and leak against the president and against the Secretary of Defense. And when Pete Hegseth learned that this is happening, that you had officials who were leaking to undermine him and the president, then he appropriately removed them from their positions. And this investigation is ongoing, and if it turns out that more officials were leaking against the president's decisions and against Pete, then they should be removed as well. But Pete Hegseth is working very hard to advance the president's agenda. I'm glad to see he has the president's confidence. He has mine.
Now, Senator Cotton, there was also a leak about Israel's war plans. I don't know whether or not to believe it because it's in the New York Times. They could have made it out of whole cloth, or someone could have made it out of whole cloth and told it to him, and it was a story too good not to run. Prime Minister Netanyahu recorded an announcement basically telling Israelis to brace up. Big things are afoot. Fundamental things are afoot. What do you think he meant by that? And did you believe the New York Times story on Israel's war plans?
Well, Hugh, this is an example of the kind of leak that is designed to undermine President Trump, to box him in, and to restrict his decision space in the future. For all we know, maybe it was some of the people that have already been removed by Secretary Hegseth or who might be removed. I don't know if it's true or not. There's obviously a limited number of cabinet officials in the Oval Office in that meeting, I would presume, but everyone goes back and debriefs their senior aides at their department or agency. So it's possible someone may have passed along a story that put a spin on that meeting in a way that was designed to advance their policy objectives, not the president's objectives or not their principal's objectives. I will say this, it is a unique moment for the United States and Israel in our struggle to contain Iran from ever going nuclear. They are mere weeks away from having enough enriched uranium for a nuclear weapon. They're just a couple years, Hugh, away from probably having a missile that could hit the United States. So this is not just a threat to Israel, it's a threat to us. But they're also uniquely vulnerable because Iran totally destroyed their air and missile defenses last year, and their terrorist proxies like Hamas, like Hezbollah, like these rebels in Yemen, have also been devastated. So while the threat is uniquely high, Iran's vulnerability is uniquely high as well. And I think that's what Prime Minister Netanyahu said. And I can just tell you in terms of the so-called war plans that were in that story, Hugh, I could tell you if you were facing Nolan Ryan that, he's probably going to bust you inside with a four-seam fastball and then go away with the change or the curve. Now, his game plan. Now go up and get a hit. That's about the level of planning that was in that New York Times story. And Iran showed twice last year when they launched attacks against Israel, they have no ability to stop a plan that Israel's going to execute on or to execute on their own plan. It's one thing to know a plan in general contours. It's a very different thing to actually execute on that plan.
Well said. Senator Tom Cotton, always a pleasure. Follow him on X at Sen Tom Cotton. Thank you, Senator. I have lately been inhaling a many-part podcast from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies called The Iran Breakdown, hosted by Mark Dubovitz, and his colleague Jonathan Schanzer joins me now. Jonathan, I don't know how you guys pump out this much stuff, but it's all good. Is there like a master plan, or do you all like hamsters on the wheel all day long every day? Because you do one 3 or 4 times a week in the morning.
I do something called the FTD Morning Brief, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Mark's got his, Cliff's got his, called Foreign Papacy. So we're just all hamsters on a wheel, as you just said. It's been just nonstop since October 7th.
Well, it's been excellent material. Let's turn to what the Prime Minister of Israel had to say over the weekend. How did you interpret Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech to the nation?
Well, look, I think that Benjamin Netanyahu is in kind of a tough spot right now, right? I mean, he has thrown his lot with Donald Trump. Donald Trump has done a lot to help him, right? I mean, he's got the release of a number of hostages since coming back to the White House. On top of that, we've got weapons that have been delivered to Israel. I've actually seen some of those weapons on a recent trip to Israel. They are incredibly thankful there. The sanctions are back on Iran, but there is now the concern about Donald Trump getting into some kind of a flawed nuclear agreement reminiscent of the 2015 nuclear deal that Obama got into, that Donald Trump very rightly slammed during his first bid for the presidency. So there is this sort of confusion right now in Israel about whether we are on track with our two countries, whether this alliance is going in the right direction. Donald Trump is, of course, right now flirting with the idea of this agreement through these negotiations that he's been having in Muscat, Oman.
Now, Jonathan, is there a little bit of battered ally syndrome here? Because I know we've had 2 meetings between Mr. Witkoff and Iranian representatives. A technical meeting is happening this week, and then a third meeting. Seems to me that Donald Trump is making sure that Iran is put in the position of saying no 3 times before anything happens. And they're not going to open their doors, right? You and I know that. They're not going to come clean. Do you think Donald Trump's going to get head faked into believing they came clean?
No, but I do think, Hugh, that there is some risk here that Donald Trump, obviously within the Republican Party, we have 2 camps, right? We've got a camp that is basically saying, save all of our ammo, save all of our effort for China and China alone. And then there are those who are saying, look, we have an opportunity right now with Iran's air defenses knocked out. The Israelis destroyed those back in October of last year, that there's an opportunity of taking out this significant threat, not just to the U.S., but to our allies around the region. And right now, I think it's safe to say that the president's getting pulled in 2 different directions. Now, I do think that he wants to give peace a chance, so to speak. I think he wants to give the Iranians an opportunity to do the right thing, to give up that nuclear program. The concern that we have right now is that Donald Trump could, according to what we're hearing out of Stephen Witkoff at any rate, he could agree to Iran having a nuclear program where it enriches uranium at a low level. But as we know, Hugh, the risk there is that it leaves the door open for Iran to expand that nuclear program as they have in the past, take advantage of the United States, fleece the West, as we saw back in 2015.
Now, I know Mr. Witkoff said that 3.67 number, and then he quickly walked it back. He may not know the file very well, but I think he knows what no means. And so if he says immediate inspections anywhere in Iran by the International Atomic Energy Agency beginning next week, Iran's going to say no, and then they can go home, because they've never allowed a real inspection regime. I believe that's true. Is that not correct? They have never allowed a real inspection regime. So that ought to be demand number 1. And when they say no, everything else is moot.
Yeah, and I think, look, that is the best interpretation of what could be going on here right now, is you give Iran a chance to say no, and then when they do, all bets are off, and Donald Trump and his advisors and his military can do whatever they choose, because we know that Iran's air defenses are down. We know that they're weak. We know that the terrorist proxies that they funded and armed and supported and financed over the years are also weak. The entire state of Iran's regional aspirations is just collapsing right now. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here. There's just the one risk, which is that whether it's Stephen Witkoff or Donald Trump himself, that they say, okay, well, they've agreed to do a lot less, and so that's good enough for us. I want to believe that Donald Trump is going to hold Iran's feet to the fire, especially because they're as weak as they are. We've never had an opportunity this significant with the Islamic Republic. They are on their knees right now, and I think we have an opportunity to capitalize. That's what the message is from Israel right now to the White House. Whether the White House is listening, I think will remain to be seen. We'll find out, I'm guessing, over the next week or so.
Now, Jonathan, I want to switch back to Gaza because I listened to Dan Senor and the latest edition of Nadav and Amit today, left-wing Israeli, right-wing Israeli, arguing about what the prime minister intends for Gaza. I don't know, and I can't listen to Hebrew media. What do you think he intends for Gaza?
I think that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wants to finish off Hamas. And of course, that is the lesson that I think needs to be taught to the region. I think Israel understands this, that if they fight to a tie, then this war will have been for naught. If they allow for Hamas to remain in the Gaza Strip, that is going to look weak from Israel's perspective. Its enemies will see that as Israel lacking the will to finish a fight. And so it's for that reason that I think the Israeli government may choose to prioritize the defeat of Hamas over the return of the hostages. Hugh, let me just say that when the Israeli government, soon after the October 7th attacks, came out with their two-pronged approach to the war, I remember scratching my head as soon as I heard it, that the two war aims do not align. In other words, if you want to return the hostages, then you're probably going to have to cut a deal with Hamas. And cutting a deal with Hamas means that it's going to continue to survive. The other war aim was the total defeat of Hamas, which would mean you're probably not getting all of the hostages back. I think at the end of the day, Bibi Netanyahu understands that he's got one major war aim, which is to defeat Iran, and he's working on that right now. They're in a scramble right now with the White House to try to get to alignment there. And then I think you've got the proxies that Israel has been fighting. They're all a lot weaker. But this one in particular, Hamas in Gaza, as far as I see it, this is a key objective for Israel to destroy it as a symbol for all those who might dare to carry out attacks along the lines of what we saw on October 7th.
Jonathan, thanks for your time today. I'll be listening for your morning brief on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You ought to be liking and following Jonathan and the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. I cannot recommend enough the Iran breakdown, beginning with the interview with the Crown Prince of Iran, and then continuing right through yesterday. I was listening to Yair Lapid yesterday, talking to Mark Dubowitz. It's really quite an amazing series of podcasts, all from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Thank you, Jonathan Schanzer. Follow him on X at Schanzer. I hope you had a great Easter weekend. I did. We had a very traditional dinner of chicken enchiladas for
enchiladas.
Huh?
Enchiladas?
Enchiladas, yes.
Yes.
Enchilada.
Yes.
And so the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt's chicken enchiladas are well known and renowned. And her brother and my sister-in-law were over. It was a very quiet Easter because everyone's on the East Coast. Do your bunnies have ears still?
My buddies do not have ears.
All right, so now that is not a My PhD approved. MyPhDweightloss.com, 864-644-1900. That's
864-644-1900.
Dwayne lost 50 pounds, and he did not do so eating the ears off of the bunnies.
This is true, but I have two miscellaneous random people that de-eared the bunnies already.
They de-eared your bunnies?
Yes.
You know, one of those miscellaneous random people sabotages the studio on a weekly basis.
Apparently so.
He comes in here under the guise of cleaning, and he moves everything around. Let me show people.
First world problems right here.
Let me show
This
people.
is your first world problems.
This was my Tim Couch bobblehead doll.
Yes.
If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, it's now in two pieces.
He's on the injured reserve list.
He's on the permanently injured reserve list because Generalissimo saw it was in his best interest to model for the random miscellaneous person how to destroy my tchotchkes. And
then you destroyed it on top of that just to make sure it was.
Well, no, you knocked it off twice. But I want to know something.
Yes.
You lost 50 pounds.
I did.
No chocolate bunnies on the myphdweightloss.com.
No, I didn't even have an M&M for the 12 weeks I was on the program.
864
644
1900, but you kept the 50 pounds off, or at least 45 of it?
Yes.
45 of it.
Yes.
You went all the way down, then you bounced up 5.
Well, okay.
Have you bounced up more than that 5?
No.
Any jelly beans this weekend?
No jelly beans.
Are jelly beans on the MyPhD weight loss?
Jelly beans are not, but honey baked ham is.
Is Peeps?
I never ate Peeps.
How about malted milk, chocolate, eggs?
Oh, those are really good.
Those are really good. That's my favorite Easter candy.
Those are really good, but I didn't have any.
Do you know that my sister-in-law likes black jelly beans?
Is this the crazy one?
No.
This isn't the Clay Aiken fan?
No.
Okay, so
no. I don't know if Jody likes the black ones or not, but this one does. And the three of us looked at her in kind of wonder, because you can actually corner the market on the black jelly beans pretty easily.
Do you send her fruitcakes for Christmas too?
I could, but they are in the category of fruitcakes.
They really are. They're the fruitcakes of jelly beans.
You know, don't tell me that My PhD Weight Loss has a list of things you can eat that includes black jelly beans and fruitcakes.
I won't tell you that.
Because that's actually a not very helpful list.
I would agree with that.
What about white jelly beans? What do you think of those?
They're not as good as the red and the orange ones.
Well, they're not even close to those, but are they as bad as the black ones?
As far as weight loss damage or taste?
No, taste.
Taste are better than
Arguable.
Black ones.
Yeah.
Oh,
black ones are the worst. They're licorice.
Well, yeah. I mean, every jelly bean has to have a floor, right? Black are the floor of jelly beans. White is just a little bit above the floor.
All right. But what's at the top?
You got to go with red or orange. Probably red.
Purple.
Those are pretty good too. Grapes
Purple.
are
green or in the middle.
Green or in the middle.
Green or in the middle. I mean, I'll eat a green if there's only a green, but
red and orange are right.
Red and orange are right up there with purple.
Yeah.
Yellows?
In a pinch.
Remind me to ask Lilacs about this week.
About Jelly Bellies?
Yeah, because Lilacs, everyone knows his podcast. The diner goes out on Easter.
Dinette.
The dinette.
Yes, the dinette.
The dinette. So that's it. If you're missing Lilacs, he'll be along later in the week. If you're missing Dennis Prager, here's a little bit of Pragertopia for you.
You all have heard of the top 1%. When you say the top 1% in the United States, what do you mean? The top 1% in terms of income. So how about in terms of having had serious obstacles to happiness in life? What percentage of Americans does not?
Well, that's very interesting. I may have to go listen to Pragertopia today. You can join Pragertopia and get your daily dose of Dennis until he's back, we hope, in June, by just going to Pragertopia and signing up. I really do think you'll thank me for that as well as everything else. Let me play for you my winners or losers from Special Report on Friday night, cut number 3.
All right, quickly, winners and losers down the row. Hugh, go ahead.
Well, the big winner is head coach of the Ohio State University football team, Ryan Day. He went to the White House and managed in 2-3 minutes to run down the entire championship run of the Buckeyes this year. Greatest recruiting speech ever, with President Trump in the White House behind him to show some recruits. And then the loser of the week is Harvard, which I think is greatly overestimated how appealing its dismissal of the administration's attempt to enforce the Civil Rights Act and the Constitution against I love my winners and losers. I stand by them. Last hour, I talked to Arthur Brooks, Professor Brooks of Harvard Business School. He expressed optimism that Harvard and the Trump administration could work things out. Well, 30 minutes ago, Harvard posted that, quote, moments ago, we filed a lawsuit to halt the funding freeze because it is unlawful and beyond the government's authority, President Alan Garber. Well, so much for Arthur's optimism. I don't know who's advising President Garber, but the quick draw McGraw's, trick draw McGraw, who is sitting in his right shoulder and Yosemite Sam on his left shoulder, not doing Harvard any good. Maybe lay down the weapons, give the president a call, and go talk to him, because this is not the way to do it, because the federal government is bigger than Harvard, and they're going to win. The biggest story, though, of course, is the death of Pope Francis. And I was on pins and needles for a few weeks as a good Catholic about the health of the pontiff and thought he was past the crisis point. In fact, yesterday he had a meeting with Vice President J.D. Vance. Here's the cell phone video of that meeting and their call on Good Friday, cut number 13.
Pray for you every day. Bless you. So good to see you. Good morning. How are you?
Find yourself.
Good. Yeah, thank you. I've not been feeling great, but it's good to see you in better health.
Grazie, Santo Padre.
Thank you.
These are for your children.
Okay, thank you.
He looks pretty good.
Gifts for you.
And then, I think it's a blessing. He died quickly of a stroke. Doesn't say in his sleep or anything, but unexpectedly, the cardinals who had begun to prepare for a conclave are now preparing for a conclave again. This hasn't happened in 13 years, and it's only happened 3 times since 1978. And we have not had a pope under the age of 75 since 1995, when John Paul the Great, St. John Paul the Great, turned 75. Now, I have posted over on my X account the article by Archbishop Charles Chaput, the Archbishop Emeritus of Philadelphia, and I will shortly post there as well a link to R.R. Reno, the editor of First Things. They're the 2 best things I read about Francis. And whatever you think about him, and he had very good days and he had a lot of bad ones. He had a really couple of great days with the lost and the least and the most famous picture. In fact, I interviewed Vim Venders 7 years ago about a movie he made about the Pope. Let's begin that, cut number 1.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening today. That's Patti Smith singing Those Are the Words. It's the song that concludes a magnificent new movie, Pope Francis, A Man of His Word. A beautiful film that is in theaters now. I'm joined by its director, Vim Venders. Mr. Venders, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Great to have you on. Congratulations.
Good morning. Thank you so much.
I went to see Pope Francis, A Man of His Word. The first night it was in the theaters, Focus had sent me a trailer. I wouldn't watch it on a computer. I wanted to see it on a big screen, and it's wonderful. It's beautiful. It actually captures the potential of the papacy. But what I want to ask you is some technical stuff. How many hours did you spend with His Holiness?
We had 4 afternoons, and each time spent a good 2 hours with him over the course of 2 years.
That's pretty remarkable. And of all of the shots, and there are some amazing shots. I've been in the favelas of Brazil. I've been in various places in Israel. Which was the most difficult to shoot?
Well, his journeys took him really everywhere, all over the planet, and I didn't shoot all of this. Sometimes he was accompanied by a crew of 2 young cameramen from the Vatican TV. Some of it is preceding my involvement, so we had access to the entire archive of the Vatican, and some of these amazing shots from all sorts of places all over the world are not shot by ourselves.
Well, you're very humble. Some of them obviously are your work. If anyone's seen Wings of Desire or Buena Vista Social Club, of those that you shot, which was the most difficult?
Well, I tell you the truth, the most difficult was not so much the Pope. The most difficult was the reenactment of St. Francis. And for a movie that was really supposed to be a poor film, we didn't have many means in order to do justice to the Pope's message, to get away with less. So we had a small budget voluntarily. And to recreate the 13th century around St. Francis with no means was indeed quite a challenge.
Oh, that was great, especially when he went to see the Saracen. I mean, that's very well done. I didn't know that. So you were trying to imitate in the making of the film the Pope's message about material wealth?
Yes, we tried to incorporate that into the making of the film. He's really pleading that all of us, we could do with less and maybe not grow so much and let others who have less catch up with us a little bit at least. So we figured we're going to prove with our movie that we can make also a movie with less.
Oh, very well done. Now, my friend Archbishop Chaput, who, by the way, he's a saint. He has a small little part of your film. He's in the frame where you're at the prison in Philadelphia. He has said that you, quote, weave an ongoing, intimate, one-on-one interview with the Pope through the film. It's hugely effective, said the Archbishop. One has a sense that Francis is speaking directly to the individual viewer. Was that the point?
Yeah. That was the point. When I realized I had this unbelievable privilege to be face-to-face with Pope Francis, I figured that is exactly what I would like to share with the audience and with everybody in the movie theater, put in my space and have that face-to-face experience with the Pope. So we shot it in a way that the Pope is actually, while looking at me, with the help of a reverse teleprompter, so to speak, where he, of course, doesn't see his text, but he sees my face. I was the living question, and while talking to me, the camera is shot through this teleprompter, and so now he's really talking to each and everybody in the audience, and that is what I really wanted to share with people.
Hold on. We'll play a little bit more of that. It was a fascinating interview. It's in the archive if you Google Hugh Hewitt and Vim Venders. Maybe I'll put it up at our YouTube channel as well. I'll be back tomorrow with lots more on the aftermath of the passing of Pope Francis. In the meantime, here's a little bit more of the interview I did in 2018 with film director Vim Venders about his movie about Francis.
It comes through. My background, I did a Searching for God in America series for PBS 22 years ago, and I had to interview the Dalai Lama, and it's so hard to let the individual speak to you because the cameraman, the surround. How did you create the intimacy with him? How did you keep the noise from overwhelming the conversation?
Well, we chose quiet places to begin with, and then we set up our set so the Pope really only saw me. He didn't see any other person. He didn't see any sound guys or any camera person. He just saw me on the screen, and we created a very intimate surrounding because this wasn't supposed to be so-called interview with the Pope. We wanted it to be one-on-one and wanted to put the audience into that position of looking him in the eye.
That is so telling. So he was not surrounded by all the flotsam and jetsam of movie making or television making when he talked.
No, he only saw. It was as if he had been alone.
That is remarkable. It's very effectively done. Let me talk to you about a couple of things that he said. First of all, no movie is not going to be met with some criticism. I have one question, which is sort of a critique. I'll be honest with you. At the end, you have a beautiful shot of the Pope with President Obama. Then you show Putin. Then you show President Trump. What's your message there, Mr. Venders?
Well, he meets all these people in power, and you also see the Turkish president, and you also see him meet Perez and Abbas, at the time both still president of Palestine and Israel. So he meets
and Shimon Peres.
He does a lot of Shimon Peres. So he meets people in power, and it just appears in a montage basically, and he does say, the more power you have, the more you're responsible to be humble. And I think that goes for really all people of power today, that they're this call to humility, and that is the only purpose of that montage.
Okay, because I took away from it that perhaps Director Venders is saying President Obama good, Putin and Trump not good.
No, we didn't do that, no.
Okay.
We refrained from that. We said people in power, he says, be careful what you do, because you have the obligation to, the more power you have, the more you're obliged to be humble, and the more you are responsible for people's lives.
Now, it's a fine interview, if I say so myself. It's a beautiful movie. It was done, well, it's 7 years ago, so halfway through the Francis papacy. and maybe it went downhill after that in terms of controversy. That might have been the high point, but I'd recommend it to you. And prayers for the soul of Pope Francis. We'll talk more about how important it is that the cardinals get it right when they gather in 15 to 19 days. I'll be back tomorrow. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, James, who's the intern. Going to be the new rookie. We'll make fun of him pretty soon.